And tonight, Chief Justice Gertrude Torkornoo is gone. She is no longer the Chief Justice of this great republic. That decision was announced to this great republic by the presidency today. This is unprecedented. It's the big news. This has been unfolding in the last few hours on the back of the presentation of a report by the committee that the president constituted, pursuant to the constitutional provision. And she's gone. She was found guilty on stated misbehavior. That was established today and presented to the president. In fact, was established by the committee but presented to the president today. And the decision that the president have to abide by. The president has no choice in the matter, we are told. And once that establishment had been made and a case made on this subject of misbehavior, the president had to simply comply. This, in essence, is at the heart of the decision to remove Gertrude Torkornoo. That is a decision tonight, as communicated by the presidency on this major subject. She's been on the bench for 21 years. So this is a long-serving justice of our courts, and she has really served long and hard and put in the hard yards to reach the Supreme Court. She served on the bench and rose to become the Chief Justice. This is the first time we're seeing this play out for somebody with that background and service to the judiciary, and also, as you know, in the judiciary, seniority is very important. It doesn't mean that on the bench they're wearing other justices of the Supreme Court who have not served longer on the bench than her, but of course she became the Chief Justice, and we don't know that she's no longer going to hold that position. She's been on suspension for a while. That is no longer the case. As we speak tonight, you can now call her former Chief Justice after 21 years on the bench. This case has traveled a fair bit. And let's get into the background. If you recall, the petitions were first submitted to the president as dictated by the Constitution. And then the Council of State was giving the mandate to evaluate it and determine whether there's a prima facie case. And remember that the Council has former Chief Justices on it. And part of the reason why they're on it is because of the anticipation that this may become a live matter, and the Constitution had anticipated it. And that is why we saw that they sat on the matter and they came to a decision that is a prima facie case against the then Chief Justice, who is no longer the Chief Justice because she's been sacked today on the back of the recommendation. Following that, we know that the 5-member committee was formed against pursuant to the constitutional provision. The president must set up that the committee to look into the matter on the back of the Council of State findings. And then the Chief Justice herself, in May, on the back of the committee being formed, because once the decision had been made that it's a prima facie case against you, there's a case to answer, she had to be suspended. The president did so, suspended her. She fought it in various forums, not only her, but others also, mainly political elements in the MPP who went to court and fought this pretty hard. In all the cases that were filed in court, they were thrown out. She lost in different forums that she took this up in. The committee then submits its recommendation, which also happened today. Shortly thereafter, we were told by the presidency that they have accepted the recommendation of the committee, and that the president had a choice in the matter. And it is obvious now that the committee, that by the way had two colleagues of Justice Torkornoo, also sitting, one of them was a chairman, Scott Palman, two of her own colleagues came to the conclusion that she had misbehaved. There was enough grounds to establish a case of misbehavior against her that justifies and warrants her removal, which is exactly what the president had done today. It has been 133 days since, as you know, the first petitions went to the presidency. It's traveled quite a bit. I mean, and this was in April 2022, if you recall. And it has been full of drama. Remember, for the first time we saw a Chief Justice, although at the time suspended, address a news conference. Never seen that before, about what at the time she complained of violations of her rights rights of fair trial, a fair hearing, and that she's not been treated as she would have as the Chief Justice done to those coming before her. And she raised several allegations against the committee. Today, the committee actually said a lot of the allegations that were made against them were false, but they restrained themselves. So these 133 days has been full of drama, and topped it all with the removal today. As I'm talking, you may be wondering who really are the members of this committee. And the sense is clear. This was a committee recommendation. It was unanimous. All 5 members of the committee agreed that the Chief Justice needed to go. Chairman obviously communicated this to the President. He presented it and spoke about their decision without telling us exactly what the conclusions were. Justice Scott Parman, who chairs it, is a colleague of the Chief Justice. Justice Adibu Asidu, colleague of the Chief Justice too. And I must stop here to give you a bit more of the drama that unfolded on the back of this. He was one of those accused of allegedly meeting to conspire to remove the Chief Justice at a restaurant here in the Greater Accra region. And we showed you the evidence because the CCTV footage emerged of that. It was really a dinner because it was his birthday and he had gone there to celebrate and to simply have dinner. And an allegation was made and a petition was sent to the presidency. The claim was that they had met and they had been overheard plotting to remove the Chief Justice and trying to sort of agree on how best to proceed with their removal. The evidence showed that that isn't the case. And because the CCTV was approved, and this meeting was a fairly brief one, they had met, and that really wasn't a meeting where we also saw the lawyer, one of the petitioners, also having a meeting at the same venue. And the accusation then was that they had met this lawyer and they had discussed and plotted because the petitioner's lawyer was there and was conspiring with the judges. We saw that the footage didn't show that at all. So that really is part of the drama, one of the major dramas that unfolded on the back of this. When do you see CCTV footage emerging of judges going to a restaurant to have dinner and being caught on tape, and allegations are swirling around what the intentions were for going there? But all played out in 133 days that this was before the committee's hearing. And then you know him, Daniel Doyle, famous for the role he played as a former Auditor General, no-nonsense man who really himself was the subject of a very controversial removal by the then President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, was forced to retire, and he then got to sit on this matter too. And then we also had Major Flora Dalugo, who was of the Armed Forces. And then we had Professor James Jissa, Associate Professor at the University of Ghana. By the way, the composition of this committee is specified in law, it's in the Constitution. The President had to comply. The individuals, as in the specifics of who they were, is not specified. However, their qualifications and who they should be, the criteria is very clear, and the President had to select the individuals. And clearly, from what we understand, this was a unanimous recommendation by all 5 members of this particular committee. And this is another part of this process that was fascinating. When the process started, the Chief Justice herself, although the matter was in camera, took the case beyond the committee, and she went and she fought pretty hard, tooth and nail, both at in the courts here in Ghana, the same courts that she superintended over as the Chief Justice, and lost all the cases. She wasn't the only person who did so. There were others in Parliament who also took up cases in the courts, fighting the process to remove her. All of them failed. At least 6 suits were filed. As we speak, she's at the ECOWAS court, so trying to deal with this matter. We'll try and unpack that part of this, though, because while that case is ongoing at the ECOWAS court, the decision has been taken that she should be removed and she's no longer the Chief Justice. So really, what's the remedy there? We'll talk to the lead counsel for the Chief Justice who's joining me tonight for a conversation. We know that it is Daniel Ofori's petition, the three of them. Daniel Ofori's petition is the one that the committee has decided on, because they finished that. Daniel Ofori brought 13 witnesses. The Chief Justice had 12. She was cross-examined. They evaluated it, made a recommendation to the President. The key question then to ask is, what happened to the two? They're still pending. So how come they've come to a conclusion when they haven't had the other three? The other two, by the way. It's a fundamental question. And can you do that? Will this still proceed? So will this go on? Or is it the case that once you found her culpable on the first one, there was no need to proceed with the other two, even if on the other two very separate and distinct petitions against her, it didn't matter in any case? So that for me is a fundamental question that we need to ask, because the committee itself, when they went to the President, were clear that the Chief Justice had asked that in the two cases should be deferred. And so we'll get into that pretty shortly. Now, if you look at the first case, the case of the Daniel Ofori, he made 21 allegations of misbehavior against the former Chief Justice and 4 allegations of incompetence. This is far more difficult to prove than this. And they found her to have misbehaved. There was grounds for misbehavior, which is why fundamentally she's gone. What were the allegations? Just to refresh your memory, the primary one around which a lot of the controversy revolved was this allegation that she misappropriated 337,000 cedis on foreign travels, not only for herself, but for the husband, for the spouse, and others that she wasn't entitled to suspend. There was also cases against her of unreasonably fast-tracking Afenyo Marking versus the Speaker hearing, arbitrarily reassigning cases between judges, dismissed judicial staff over minor offenses, ordered national security to seize High Court computers, all cases made against her by Daniel Ofori in his petition. But if you look at it though, details of the committee's hearing on the Daniel Ofori matter, as we have now come to learn from the committee's report, that the Chief Justice personally testified when the allegations were made against her. And the CJ, we know now, called 12 witnesses to testify on her behalf. We've read that some of these individuals who testified on her behalf include a former Chief Justice, for example, that came before the committee. How come their testimony didn't hold sway in convincing the committee to let her pass? We'll talk about that. Ofori also presented 13 witnesses. But this is fascinating indeed. 10,000 plus documents were all filed in this particular matter. That's quite a bit of documents filed. And the second and third petitions to be heard later. We'll talk about that. Is there even a case for it to go on? The main question now we need to ask ourselves is, what happens now? This is fait accompli, is it not? Is there any way back for her? The Constitution doesn't provide a path for her to challenge or mount an appeal process. It's not part of this equation. And so this is fait accompli, it's done. The big question is, who becomes the next CJ? 3 names pop up. You obviously have the man who is acting, but for money. You have Justice Scott Parman, who obviously is the chair of this committee, very senior. Indeed, when he isn't there, he is the most senior. And many who also settle, many people's favorite, Justice Yoni Kulendi. In fact, at the time when Justice Tokonu was being considered, many thought it was a straight race between herself and Justice Yoni Kulendi. Many say, because of his background, because of the work that he's done in the private sector, coming in now onto the bench, and the many fantastic judgments that he's written since getting onto the bench of the Supreme Court. He's young too. He's pretty progressive in his thinking. He seemed to be the man if you really want change in the way the judiciary operates. You want to consider Justice Yoni Kulendi. So that fundamentally is looking ahead to who succeeds Justice Gettu Tokonu. 2 of them belonging to the old guard, if you want freshen things up a bit and give a new lease of life to the judiciary, many will say, well, Jody Kulendi should be the one to consider.